Smile for the camera. It's a sunny summer Sunday. Let's go for a ride. The weather's much too nice for us to stay inside. It's a sunny summer Sunday, and our week's work is through. I want to spend my day off just being with you.
Always was attracted to animals. I grew up on a great big farm, 160 acres, and my dad got kind of excited and he thought, well, we'll do a trail riding business, but the insurance for that was too much. We got what they call the horse fever, and we just always had horses from that point on, and it grew from our family to our surrounding families, even to my cousin Karen. Karen O'Connor and David got the gold medal at the 2000 Olympics. When I was 9, Laurie McGregor on a Disney movie called The 3 Lives of Thomasina was a woman that cared for animals, and she was kind of my idol. She had wounded raccoons and deer, and the kids were always looking at her as somebody that was mysterious, but she really had a connection with the animals. I didn't get along really well with my peers as a kid. I really related more to animals until I got older and just felt that animals could understand what I was communicating, and I certainly could key into what they were communicating. So as a kid, I was kind of known as the town vet, and I rescued a hawk that had been hit by a car. My dog that I had at the time had grabbed a baby woodchuck and shook it and dislocated its back hip, and it was still on mother's milk, so I had to feed that with a bottle. My mother had raised some baby rabbits that my father had dug up accidentally in a construction site. So I've always had an affinity for animals and really enjoyed them. That's where it started. And then when I grew up and got married, lack of land, lack of finances, growing up with the 2 kids, got into what I thought I wanted to do, which was open a pet store. I had 58 birds at one point, 11 aquariums. And then my husband got sick of the birds, and he finally said, me or the birds? Well, he made money, so it was an easy decision, so I sold the birds. Shortly thereafter, my husband passed away, and I put an ad in the paper, and lo and behold, my current husband answered that ad. And my goal was to interview 20 men, because I was a boss, I had to do interviews. And Jim, number 8, answered the ad, and he really was a really neat guy and had values very similar to mine. So we got together and bought this property. He had lived a few years in a condo, and we bought this property, and he had a house that he had built in a previous relationship, so had some woodworking background, and we built the shed, which was our first barn, and started out with 2 horses there. And then we were under the illusion that we wanted to raise sheep. We did that for 2 years. We got the Scottish blackface sheep, which were very independent sheep. They were not cowardly sheep at all. They had horns, they were clever, they were difficult to handle. You didn't handle just one, you handled the wave. And we wanted to be self-sufficient as a little farm, so have our own meat, and the sheep were going to be part of that. I was going to get into spinning my own yarn and making rugs and that kind of stuff in our garden, and Jim was really interested in the fruit trees and growing things for a farm stand out front and raising things for ourselves as well as selling the excess. The sheep did not last. The horses, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to put it, did. But they didn't pay for themselves. They ended up being very costly, and so we decided to add things to the farm that would start to pay for themselves. So that was chickens and raising our own eggs and selling the extra eggs. And then I got into bunnies, and I've always loved bunnies, and I started bringing them into the nursing home as what we call Valium therapy. So they were furry Valiums that we passed around in people's lap in the nursing home that I work at. And the bunnies actually pay for themselves because I raise some really gentle varieties that are good for children. Kind of where we got started, and then got the big idea that on an annual basis we would invite people to come to the farm. So I had an annual farm day, and then I started inviting other farmers in the area that had farm-related products. And then people started coming in on Sundays. We decided to be open Sunday afternoon for very little cost, such as a donation. And the kids just really had a blast being able to pat the horses. The biggest thing is allowing them to brush the horses. And just getting experience with the horses. And then we added the bunnies, and they were holding the bunnies and that kind of stuff. So that's sort of how we got started.
I think the very first time I came to visit you, you told me something that really kind of struck a nerve with me while I was sitting in the paddock and looking at the horses. And you sat down on the ground with one of the miniature horses, who they're just so enchanting. And you said, after a really hard day, and you've really kind of felt like the world just kind of coming down, you'd step into their world.
Yeah.
And there was a connection for you and a healing that went on for you by working with the horses, just sitting on the ground. Can you tell me a little bit more about what we talked about that day?
I believe that animals have a sacred space around them, just as humans do. And when you can get into that sacred space without invading it and just become part of that space, there is a sense of well-being, peace, and love that's unconditional that occurs between you and the animal, and a sense of satisfaction that in you providing care for them, they give you the gift of just connecting with you. It's hard to put into words. It's more experiential, which is another reason why we have the farm as interactive as it is for the children. The animals are really honest with their response. So if a child or myself forgets to show respect or honor that space, and you barge in, their response is going to be, "Who are you?" and I'm backing off. So it's a checkpoint, or almost like a biofeedback checkpoint, if you want to call it that, that allows you to get in their space, and your blood pressure gets lower. You have this sense of feeling whole. It's hard to put into words. And you get that feedback of trust. Animals, if they don't trust you, they stand back, and if you can get that trust going, you have formed another bond that you can use in relating with people and getting stronger relationships in your life.
So you've added a whole new dimension to the work that you do as a nurse by bringing in this animals in its own sort of therapy.
Yes, which I strongly believe in for the elderly, partly because of the touch deprivation, partly because of sensory deprivation, and mostly because that adjustment from going from a home to a nursing home are all those losses that they go through. And you can't help but be angry or depressed as a result of that. And you have a little animal that comes in, whether I bring in the goats that bounce around, the horses, the rabbits, or even a couple of chickens. They just get a kick out of it, and it brings back all their memories. And then they start conversing in the times that were happier for them instead of focusing on what's not happy for them right now. It makes me feel much more humbled at the same time of feeling privileged or blessed. And I go back to, you know, Oprah. It was long before Oprah, but counting your blessings before you go to bed, and counting your blessings that your family's healthy, that you made a difference in one person's life, that your animals are happy and content, and focusing on the positive in your life. You have to focus on what you get out of it, and you attract more positive as a result of that. And that's one of the aspects of keeping the farm open on Sunday afternoons for interactive for the kids, because families do come back and just say, that really made a difference in my son's life, or that really made a difference in my daughter's life, or that made a difference for all of us. We couldn't stop talking about it. And then they come back and they go back out with the horses, and they just get in that space.
How could somebody from your teachings and your experience activate the power of one today?
The first thing that needs to be done is, what is it that makes you feel really good about yourself? That book called Do What You Love, The Money Will Follow. What is it that makes you feel good about what you're doing? What is it that makes you feel satisfied at the end of the day? So once you define that moment and for Jim and I, it was being good stewards of the earth and steward and responsibility of caring for animals and relating to people through that. Discover that first and do some action plans of getting to that. And Jim, my husband, and I have various things. I tend to be looking at the big picture and coming into the details. Again, it's harder to put into words, but it's following what feels right to you and bringing people in your lives that are positive, that make you feel good about the path that you're on. So finding people that validate the spot that you're in and not people that are going to be toxic and talk you out of it. So I think that's the most powerful for me. And it's hard to tell people how to do that except for to be aware. Just keep your eyes open, your heart open, and be aware of your environment and the people around you.